Well, Valentine's Day is coming up in only a few days. Valentine's Day is a time when we all give token gifts of affection to the people we love. I want to present to you, though, maybe there's something deeper behind those tokens of gifts, and maybe there's something deeper we can think about this Friday, this Valentine's Day. Friday is going to be a great day. We're going to be giving each other boxes of chocolate and diamonds, and everybody's going to be going out to eat, and flowers are going to be exchanged, and gifts of all kinds, and even hearts, and the schools will be putting up hearts and all sorts of decorations, and even songs of serenade. Wise men say only fools rush in, but I can't help falling in love with you. But maybe there's something deeper than all these beautiful things, and we all know there is. But what exactly could we look at this Friday when Valentine's comes around? Because you know what? I think a lot of people are a little bit disappointed, because sometimes we look and we think, well, it'd sure be nice to get gifts, but if we get gifts, then we might think, well, I didn't really get what I expected. So that kind of leaves us disappointed, doesn't it? There are 3 examples that I thought of that just represent the depth of profound and true love. Example number 1. Betty is a teacher's aide, and she, for years, helped this young girl, Amanda, 10 years old, in a wheelchair. Now, Amanda had spina bifida. She was born that way, and she had the little 3-year-old legs that never worked. Amanda's head was contorted, and the only sound she ever made was the same sounds as a 6-month-old, just sort of not even really consonants or vowels sounds. Amanda's arm was sort of contorted, and her hand was contorted, and she rode around in a motorized wheelchair. Now, the one thing Amanda could control was it was a motorized wheelchair that had an electronic or a control stick, and she could push her hand and the wheelchair would move forward. She could push her hand and the wheelchair would turn around. She could push her hand and the wheelchair would turn to the left, and she could go backwards. Betty didn't treat this like a job, even though she got paid. For years, Betty was Amanda's teacher's aide. She would help Amanda throughout all her classes. She had special activities for Amanda. And when the other children went to their second language classes or their phys ed classes, their physical education classes, she would take Amanda out of her wheelchair, lie her in Amanda's mat in Amanda's room, and stretch out her muscles to relieve the tension. Betty knew Amanda very well. She was like a second mother to Amanda. She sought to understand Amanda rather than seek to be understood. Example number 2. We're going to call him Michael. Michael is a father who comes home after work, and he's exhausted, he's tired, it's a physical labor. He wants to just go and sit down on the couch and watch TV. He wants to go sit down at the computer, grab himself a snack to eat, and yet instead you hear sounds of giggles and laughter because he's on the floor wrestling and playing with his kids. He doesn't really feel like it, but he pushes himself to. That he's seeking to love unselfishly rather than to be loved. Michael. Example number 3. Let's look at Arlene. Arlene and Tom, they're parents of 7 children. Arlene found out that Tom, her husband, had multiple sclerosis when their youngest was 3. They're family singers that go around to different churches throughout the country and internationally and perform, and yet when their husband was confined to a wheelchair a few years later, they got a van, and they continued their singing, and they made sure that they could have wheelchair access everywhere they went. They made sure that their father was up there performing even though he was in a wheelchair. He couldn't sing anymore, but he could still talk, and so you could hear his feeble voice on the microphone sharing about the family, sharing about their music they composed, they performed, and he was still the head of the family, and they respected him as such. And when it got to the point where he couldn't talk anymore, they still wheeled his wheelchair up there, and he performed with the whole family. Now, Tom has since passed away, and the family is all, the youngest would be in his 20s, and the oldest would be in his 40s. But they respected that father. They sought to console him rather than to be consoled. Which reminds me of a prayer of St. Francis. Kind of a different take on it, wouldn't you say, than the wise men song I just sang? Oh, Master, grant that I may never seek so much to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love with all my soul. And so before I leave you today, this Friday, rather than thinking about all those wonderful gifts that you could be getting, which is nice, and it's okay, go deeper. Remember Michael, remember Betty, and remember Arlene. That is true love.